And Marie, I'm so excited I get you in my chair. My gosh, I have, you know, when I came to Canada, there was a number of personalities in the media that I really looked up to. Being that you're South Asian was very inspirational for me. Inspiring South Asian women that were holding their own in industries that weren't so much the kind of industries that people would, you know, think are secure industries, media, music, film, and fashion. There was just a few out there that were really, you know, doing some great things. You, of course, were one of them.
Thank you.
I actually don't think, looking through, you know, your expansive career, that there's any woman with South Asian, you know, heritage in Toronto, definitely, that has worked for as many mainstream broadcasting houses in the news realm.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about, I mean, you could have gone anywhere. You decided to kind of hone your skills and, you know, work your magic in the news world. Why?
Yeah. Well, I didn't actually ever want to be in front of the camera. When I went to school for broadcasting, I couldn't stand those people who wanted to be in front of camera. I loved producing. I still really like producing. I like that idea of taking a bunch of different elements and everybody having the same thing, but, you know, I liken it to making a cake, and your cake is the best. You always want your cake to be the best at the end. So I love producing. I had teachers that kept encouraging me, go in front of the camera, so I did. And then my first sort of big network break was with CTV, and they were doing a show called 21C, which was an investigative journalism show. And my husband said, put down host. And I said, I put down AP, I put down researcher, I put down field producer, which I really love doing. And he said, put down host. So I put it at the end. And then I listed all of my experience producing and then a few little on-air things at the bottom. And I got interviewed for the on-air position, and then they hired me the next day. And that was sort of my first break. So I did that show for 4 or 5 years. And then when I started looking down the road thinking, I do eventually want to have a family, and being on the road is probably pretty tricky for that. When a news opportunity came up at Global, I thought long and hard about, do I leave the road and do I want to head into a studio? And I thought, well, it could be a good life choice down the road. And so I applied for that job and got that job at Global and been very fortunate. And then ended up at CBC about 5 years ago now. I can't believe it.
It's been a while.
It has been a while, and I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so along that journey, one thing I've read about you is that your passion and your curiosity in storytelling kind of comes from your ancestry. A lot of people don't know that there is that South Asian element in you. Yes. Believe it or not. Sri-Lankan, of course, and part Scottish.
So my father is Sri Lankan, and my mom is from Aberdeen, Scotland, Northern Scotland. And both of them have this great history of storytelling, and I love people's backgrounds because people are always surprised by my background. So I always feel like everybody has a story, especially in Canada. You never know whose parents have come from where and what their stories their grandparents have. And unlike in other countries where, you know, those are 200 years down the road, in ours sometimes they're 20 years down the road. So I love hearing people's stories. It does make me very curious, and I was always the kid with 100 questions in class, and when the class assignment was to do a one-page story, mine was 4. And I did like to, and I like to debate, and I like to talk, and I like drama. So eventually I got paid for it, which was very lucky.
Which is very, very, well, I think it's lucky for all the people and all the companies that have had you work as part of your portfolio. But your portfolio is pretty extensive. You know, you've mentioned a few things here. There has been some initiatives even within the Sri Lankan community that you've participated in. Talk to me a little bit about that.
So the one that comes to mind for a lot of people is after the 2004 tsunami in Sri Lanka. I was working at Global at the time, and they came to me and said, would you like to go back and take your father with you? Now, my dad and I have never done anything like that before. He was a businessman, and I could never describe what he did for a living to my friends. But it felt like the timing was right, and it was interesting because the entire country had opened up. So my dad left in '73, and at the time when he grew up, you could travel the whole island in Sri Lanka. And so he said his friends in the north used to call him the candy cousin because he would come up to visit all the time. And then in the 80s the roads closed and the north was separated. So to go back and have this opportunity to see the entire island, which my dad had told me about growing up, was an incredible,
huge.
It was an incredible opportunity. And for anybody, I mean, this island is so small and it's so vastly different. Even the topography of it is so different. So it felt like a real privilege, first of all, to get to go back there, but to go with my dad was incredibly special because you could see, I mean, anybody who comes from there always thinks of Sri Lanka as home. So to travel that island with my dad and see how much it hurt him to see his island and home people in suffering and in need and be able to offer that help.
For so many decades,
yes.
right?
Yeah, and to have the opportunity to see the North firsthand, and to see sort of what the segregation and what the war had done up there was also, it was good to bring back here as a journalist because you understand the issues better.
Did that experience change you as a person who lives here and is a part of society in Canada in terms of, you know, who you perceive yourself to be? I mean, do you look at yourself and say, you know what, there is a strong aspect of me that is Sri Lankan? Sometimes, you know, people, when I talk to them, they say to me that sometimes it's a little bit difficult. They feel kind of displaced. And what I mean by that is, you know, we live here, we're Canadian, but then, as you mentioned, there's a part of us that has a heritage associated with it. Do we have to give one up in order to live the other, or can we live mutually exclusive? I personally believe we can in Canada, but not in a lot of other parts of the world.
No. And
what are your thoughts?
Well, that's what makes Canada so interesting and unique, is nobody is saying to you, you have to pick one or the other. And so there's been no roadmap for that. People have just figured out how to do it themselves. And in figuring that out and having this large population of people who are figuring out how to blend these two cultures, you've sort of made a new culture.
Right.
And I'm very proud of that as a Canadian, and especially as a Torontonian, because I remember coming here from southern Alberta and seeing, walking down Queen Street and seeing, you know, there was a woman in a hijab driving a streetcar, and I thought, oh, I love this country.
So awesome.
It's so great. And I love when I hear people that move up from the States saying, you know, I can be a person of color with money here and nobody looks at me.
Right.
Funny. Nobody's following me around the store. I'm very proud of that. When my parents came in the 70s, we settled in southern Alberta. I was a baby at the time, but it was very important to them to be Canadian. And there's a real difference now between people who came during that sort of wave of immigration in the 70s, the sort of Trudeau era, and people who came in the 90s. Because people who came in the 90s identify their home country first and then Canada second. When my parents came, we were Canadian.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, Dad didn't cook curry in the house because he knew if we went to school smelling like curry, we would be separated.
Yes.
So there was none of that. My mom didn't speak the language, but my dad only spoke it when he talked to family. So we were one of those first wave of people who figured out how to be Canadian and still incorporate some of your culture.
Right.
When I moved to Toronto, and people were much more expressive about their culture because they're larger pockets of it, I rediscovered being Sri Lankan a little bit. And that was really a really neat experience. And it wasn't until my 20s that I met other Sri Lankans my age.
Right.
Because in southern Alberta, there weren't any other Sri Lankans my age.
Of course.
And I loved it. And I'll tell you the experience. I came to a dinner party, and first of all, everyone showed up like 2 hours late. I was like, oh, this is great. And then nobody ate till 10 o'clock at night, and then they rolled back the carpet and they danced till 2, and then we finally ate. And she had to move the next day. She hadn't even started packing. I thought, oh, my people.
Yes.
And my husband looked at me and he goes, it's a room full of you. And I said, yeah, it was very, very neat.
Looking back at your journey from Alberta to now, so much has happened.
Became a mom, I got married.
Love your husband. He's such a fun party guy, you know, which is really wonderful. And he's always one of those people that will, wherever you are, wherever he sees you, he'll say hi.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
I think that kind of fits with the vibe I get from you as well.
He was one of the things that attracted me to my husband, Daryl. So he was a journalist for 22 years. He now works in crisis communications in downtown Toronto.
Yeah.
But one of the things that attracted me to him, and we met in southern Alberta working at the same station, and I couldn't stand him when we met. I couldn't stand him. And I was working behind the scenes because I just thought he was extremely arrogant, and he thought I had potential as a journalist, so he just took it on himself without even asking me that he was going to show me the ropes. I was extremely insulted by this.
But that's because he was attracted to you, and you know when men are attracted to you, they feel like they need to show their importance.
Yes.
But they don't understand that what they do is they insult you in the process.
Yes. See, now where were you when I first met Daryl?
Right?
That would have helped me understand that better.
Yes.
I worked on his show behind the scenes. He was anchoring a live call-in political current affairs show, and I couldn't stand him. I made fun of him. I had a nickname for him, called him Vanilla, because he liked everything plain. And then I watched him at various community events, and it was at community events like the ones where you see him at, where I sort of became more attracted to him. We were in a room, and there was a senator from Ottawa, and there was an 80-year-old woman who was a viewer, and he gave them both the same amount of time, and he treated them both exactly the same. And I thought,
so was that was a turning point, right?
It was. I thought that was very attractive. He was kind to everyone and no respecter of persons, and I like that a lot about him.
That's wonderful. 2007, My gosh, you had triplets, lady. How did triplets come out of this tiny little body?
Oh, they were there.
How was that experience like for you?
That was life-changing.
Yes.
Daryl and I wanted to have a family. I always wanted 3 kids. I just didn't plan to have them all at the same time. And when we first found out, we were shocked. And in fact, I know now that it was shock that I went into. Like, it sounded like I was underwater and I couldn't hear. And we went into the car and I cried because I was so scared.
Yes, I understand that.
And then I quickly thought about it and thought, you know what, I don't want my kids to know my first memory of them was sadness.
Right.
So I wiped my tears and we said a little prayer and we said, okay, if we have 3 babies, they're all coming out healthy. And that was my goal from then on. And we did everything we could. I went on bed rest at Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
Loved the care we had at Mount Sinai. And I was there for 3 months.
Wow.
And we had the babies at 33 weeks in a day, which is a really healthy age to have them.
Absolutely.
And then they were in the hospital just to get big.
Yes.
Down in Oakville. And then they've been with us ever since. And they're a great little crew. 2 girls and a boy, Annabelle, Libby, and Maxim.
Yeah.
And they're all very different.
Yes.
And we like it that way.
Absolutely. I think they fit within the happy vibe that you and your husband have,
so.
and that I always see when you guys are out and about.
They give us a lot of joy. They make us laugh a lot. And there's sort of an interesting Sri Lankan connection to the babies.
Okay, tell me.
So when we were traveling for the tsunami, we were stopping at the side of the road to pick up fruit. And I picked up a banana that had 3 bananas fused into 1 skin. And the people in the van started laughing and said, I said, what's so funny? And they said, oh, that's an omenil of triplets. Well, I thought that was so funny that I took a picture, and that's 2.5 years before I ever became pregnant.
Wow.
So now by our bedside, we have a picture of me holding the bananas and a picture of the 3 kids.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, and
such
so
a great story.
I liked to that story. There's a bit of a homeland sort of auspicious connection there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with your kids, I've seen on Facebook, trips that you guys go on, and there's just all this fabulous fun and love that's happening.
Yeah, we love being the 5 of us together.
Yeah.
We really do.
Yeah. And how do you, but I mean, this is just such a cliche question, but I've got to know. I just have 1 son, and I go crazy trying to balance everything in my life. I mean, I get it right most of the time, but I mean, we're human, we don't always get it right.
That's right.
You got 3 kids, you work Monday to Friday in this like insanely like stressful environment, even though you love it, obviously.
I do.
How do you make it all work?
I don't always. I'm like you. Sometimes I don't do it right, and I forget to hand in photo forms and pay the $10 late fee. That kind of stuff happens. I have a lot of, first of all, our team at CBC News Toronto is fantastic, and I share that load with my co-anchor, Dwight Drummond, who is an awesome support, who also has 2 kids at home, 8 and 12, and he's a dad first as well, so we understand each other that way.
Yes.
And we have a great team at Toronto, so I know that I'm in good hands in a work environment. Doing a lot of the community work, you have to juggle that, and as my kids' lives get busier, a little bit of that I've had to pull back on and be a little more selective with. And I always joke that I'm the executive producer of the family.
Yes.
So I have a Google Calendar, and people have color codes, like lots of
I totally believe you, because I do all of that.
Yeah, and you just have to know, you can't be in 2 places at once. So as long as I know I have to be here at this time and here at this time, you can make it work. But it does mean, I don't take the GO train. I drive because it gives me an extra half hour at home with the kids before they go to bed.
Absolutely.
So you make all of those little sacrifices and changes, and I'm not a great cook, and I have to hire people to clean my house, but I get to spend my Saturdays and my Sundays all day with my kids. So that's the trade-off.
That's wonderful. And what are some of the favorite things that you do with your kids?
We try to do little one-on-one things. It's not easy with 3 kids. My daughter takes horseback riding lessons, and she just started this year. So I love our mornings. Saturday mornings when it's just us, and we get a Tim Hortons and we go to the stable, and then we drive back and have hot chocolate. My other daughter loves to grocery shop with me. So it sounds very silly, but we love to go, and she likes to try on things at Joe Fresh, and we sort of make an outing and some fun time with it. We love road trips. Daryl and I are both from Alberta, where you drive everywhere. So we love to pack up the van and just be the 5 of us and drive.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, one day it's not going to be the 5 of you. They're going to be gone into their own space. I know it's like, you feel like it's so far away, but my son is 17 now. And I remember the first, kick I felt like it was yesterday, and you know, and we can appreciate that as moms.
Yeah.
Do you ever think that, I mean, being that you're such an A-type planner, the Google Calendar and all, which I also have, by the way, and I will tell you that, you know, if my son changes something on the schedule and doesn't inform me, pandemonium.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, don't change the schedule.
Yeah, don't even mess with me without, you know, consulting. So we have this process. But, you know, one day, you know, just like we did, they'll be off into their own, you know, respective adventures. Do you ever think that far ahead?
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking ahead. My husband laughs because I'm always 5 to 10 years ahead.
Yes.
And that's a challenge, is to stop and enjoy right now. And that is one thing with having 3 kids at the same time. I had great advice in the beginning, and that is enjoy every moment because it goes fast. And you realize that with, I don't get to do it sort of once and then 3 years later get to do it again. And when it's done, it's done. And plus, like a first day of school, you're dividing that with 3 kids, right?
Yes.
So you have to be really intentional about now. So I work at that, and I've become better at it. But thinking down the road, my only goal for them is that they are good friends and that they love each other. So if we're not there, I want them to be there for each other. I want that connection to stick even more than they won't always be connected to us. They're going to have spouses and they'll have their kids of their own.
And that's okay. You want that.
To be together. Yeah, I want them to have that connection. I'm very close. I have 2 sisters, an older and a younger, and we are very, very close.
So you're a middle child too, huh?
I am a middle child, and I'm a classic middle child.
So am I.
That's why we're both here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to take you back to 2011. 2011 was quite a momentous year also in your career. Knowing you probably don't even remember what you did then, but I'm going to remind you.
Okay, thanks.
So right. So 2011, you won the Consumer Choice Award, the GTA Woman of the Year. Right? How did that feel?
I thought it was a joke at first, actually, and in fact, I emailed our communications officer and I said, "Is this legit?" I didn't understand, and then I was very, very honored. We don't do, and Dwight, my co-anchor, is just as involved in the community as I am, and you don't do it for awards like that.
Of course not.
You do it because it's important to be part of the city. I don't think that you've earned the right to tell people about their city unless you are actually in the city. And I love being able to give back whatever I can to different groups, and small groups and large groups, it doesn't matter. I just think if you've got it to give, you should give it.
I agree. Amen, sister. I totally agree with that. I really, I vehemently believe in everything that you're talking about. 2011, also, I'm going to remind you, was when you got the ANOKHI Excellence in Journalism Award. How did that make you feel? Because that was kind of an award from your community, recognizing it.
I was very, very honored to receive that award. And it is really neat to have it recognized from the community, because you realize there is a group of people that are paying attention, not just because you do news, but because somehow they feel like you're a little bit a part of them, and they're proud of that from the community. And I'm proud of the community. That was very humbling, is how that felt. I
want to ask you something that I've noticed in your careers portfolio. Of course, you know, news is a big part of what you've done. Investigative journalism is a big part of you know, what you're about. But you've also interviewed a lot of very extensively different personalities, right? And you've covered many different types of you know, events. Talk to me about, you know, why do you agree to do certain things? I love to find out about people, and that probably sounds very cliche, but I really do. And I've always been a watcher. One of my daughters is the same, and it's interesting to watch her do it now. But I've always been a watcher from as early as I can remember. And I don't so much as you listen to what people say, but you watch what they do. And I love. People are sort of like puzzles, and I like being able to grab clues. I don't know if you watch the BBC show Sherlock. Oh yes. Yeah, absolutely. So you know how he takes different elements and he brings it together? That's sort of science of deduction. Yes. On a much lower IQ scale. I like to sort of do that with people, and so I've always been a watcher and a listener, and I like to find out about people. I got to ask you, bucket list. Oh my gosh, this is like throwing you right at the end of the spectrum here. Looking back at your life, what would you say would be maybe 2 things that you would like to have accomplished before you say, I've done a good job with this life? Oh, Raj, that's a big question. I know. And I think you've probably already done one of them, which is being the fabulous mom and homemaker. Well, I'm not there yet. No? Not something. Hopefully that will. I think you are, because, you know, looking at how happy your kids look, tell me that you're a good mom.
Thank you.
Right, not washing the dishes or, you know, ironing the clothes, but when you see happy children, you know that the parents are good parents. That's what I look at.
Thank you. Yes, that would be my. That would be. I would like to know that when I leave this earth, that I have left it happy. I'll tell you about one woman who I admire.
Yes.
Nobody will know who she is. Her name is Grandma Doan, and she is the grandma of a friend of mine.
Yes.
And she died in a small town in central Alberta. But when she died, she had 9 kids, and when she died, all of those children and all of her grandchildren came, and they took turns, and over her, they all visited and laughed and talked until she passed. And that to me is the sign of a really good life.
Yes.
So if I can leave this earth that way, then I've done it right.
Oh, babe, you are wonderful. I adore you. I thank you so much for taking time out of your
Thanks for
insane
having me.
schedule. Are you kidding me? I adore you, and I
This is
love
a fun
everything
interview.
you do.
Thanks, Raj.